and gentlemen, Team England has seen the future and the robots are coming. But we're not against inequality. We're not against automation. We think automation has the power to save millions of lives, but it also has the power to lose millions of lives. It will, in the end, be more efficient to replace people with robots in certain industries. Robots will always be better at making cars, maybe even better at driving cars. What then is the problem? The problem is that while right now we're not in a place where jobs can all be cheaply automated, the rate of growth in automation is greater than the rate at which we can retrain people into service industries and non-automatable industries. This is a question of what we should do between now and 2067. We believe that we should slow the rate of change by disincentivizing companies from turning to automation, and by collecting tax revenue we can use to diversify the industries and the economies of the world to make it easier for more people to get jobs in a world that is increasingly automated. We believe that's a way that we can stop skyrocketing inequality, we can stop skyrocketing welfare payments by governments, and skyrocketing levels of education which make it harder to escape unemployment on their side of the house. With that in mind, what's our model? We're going to significantly increase taxes proportional to the number or percentage of jobs replaced by these companies. We're going to use that tax money to aggressively fund and incentivize a transition to future-proof industries, service and training industries like nursing or medicine or law or technology, culture or media. With that in mind, 3 points in proposition. 1, a principle as to how governments have a duty to do this. 2, the benefits that happen to workers and economies. And 3, Ed's going to tell you about how we undermine the ability for companies to use automation as a threat to workers' rights. Firstly, onto the principle. No, thank you. This is in 2 parts. The first is that it's legitimate for the government to step in to protect its people, because there's a very special relationship between the government and its people, because the people concede to give up certain rights. They have to pay taxes, they have to obey laws. In response, the people understand that the government has some duty to protect them if they're under threat. We tell you that in the instance of mass job loss, which comes with the robots, that serves as an existential threat to the lives and well-being and to the dignity of individuals who are a part of a state system. At that point, the government has a duty to protect their lives, to protect their dignity, to protect their ability to work and function in an economy. That's particularly true when we consider the fact that the people who are going to suffer the most from automation are the most vulnerable individuals. Those are the working poor, the people in the bottom 1/3 of most economies who are in manufacturing industries and industries which are easily replaceable by automation. That's also crucial because many people don't see this coming. In a recent poll, only 9% of people thought their job would be replaced by automation. The real number is closer to 59% of people. That means 50% of people are sitting there thinking that they're safe, but they're not. The government has a duty to step in and make sure that it protects them, given that they're under threat. We tell you that's so important. No, thank you. The second reason that governments have a principal duty to step in and protect their people is because companies have gained a huge advantage from a policy which harms the citizens of a government. No longer do companies have to pay payroll tax. No longer do they have to pay wages. No longer do they have to deal with sick roll pay. No longer do they have to pay into pension funds when they automate. That happens, those advantages that companies gain come at the direct expense of workers who they've put out of work and they've put on the streets. At that point, just as it's legitimate for governments to step in or have a higher rate of tax on companies which choose to pollute, right, because they harm citizens, we think governments have an obligation to step in and tax governments because tax companies because they've directly harmed the citizens of their country. Just as it's legitimate for companies to use protectionist tariffs to basically tax away foreign competition because they understand the rights of their workers and their citizens are more important, companies have an obligation to step in this case as well. I'll take it away.
Would you have placed an additional tax on companies which decided to use the steam engine in the Industrial Revolution?
Yeah. I actually think that would have been a great thing because the rate at which the steam engine put jobs out of work meant there were, like Industrial Revolution, guys, people were overwhelmingly poor. It took 100 years for inequality to decrease. Literally, we're still suffering the effects of the Industrial Revolution. That's actually worse because automation is increasing at a vastly higher rate today than it was 100 years ago. Not sure what they're getting at. Secondly, let's talk about the benefits of workers. How do we make life better for workers? Because we slow down automation. We told you that right now technology exists and it's being developed which makes it possible to automate jobs. Currently, the technology is quite expensive to set up and to maintain. This means in large parts of the world, companies choose workers over machines. The problem is that over the next 10, 20 years, that technology is going to get inordinately cheaper, which changes the incentives of companies, and it becomes immensely cheaper for them to just use robots as opposed to individuals. By taxing these companies, we slow the rate of automation because we change the incentives, because it becomes more expensive for them to automate. That means they're more likely to hold on to their workers for longer, they're less likely to turn to machines. What does that give us? Time. Why is time so important for allowing economies to develop and for ensuring that literally billions of people are safe in a new world? 3 reasons. Because in 40 or 50 years, there will be absolutely essential, it's absolutely essential that we change the way the global economy works, and it's much, much easier for us to do that when we have time and when jobs aren't being lost today. 1, because states can take measures like investing in education for growing and non-automatable sectors, both in terms of schooling children today and higher education, but also in terms of retraining the victims of industries which automate early. We support the massive investment in the IT industry by the Indian government because we think that encourages millions of people to go into an industry where their jobs won't be at risk anymore. That's something that can't happen on their side of the house because they're wasting their time dealing with the mass unemployment, because they don't have the money, which comes, by the way, on our side of the house when you tax these companies, to invest in things like education. Instead, they're spending that money on investing in things like welfare, because there are millions of people who aren't in education, aren't in schools, but are instead in social housing, which they have to build on their side of the house. The second way that we can take advantage of this time is because we allow time for the global economy to grow and to into a place where it's overwhelmingly tertiary industries. We allow global wages to increase, which they are doing under the status quo. So especially in countries like China, for example, in 10, 20, 30 years, the average wage of people in China will be enormously higher. As a result, those people will have enormously increased demand for the kind of tertiary industries that we tell you are so important. When more people are rich, more people demand services that aren't things like manufacturing industries. They demand services like palliative care. They demand things like retail, tech industries, like doctors and lawyers. When whole economies to move from primary and secondary industries into tertiary industries, everyone is getting jobs which are much, much harder to automate. As a result, we allow time for the demand for the kind of services that we tell you are so important to increase. On their side of the house, these jobs become automated, which means people don't have enough money to demand things like fancy lawyers or lots of shops or like care at the end of their lives, because they have been put out of work because their jobs have been replaced by machines. As a result, economies get stuck in cycles which they can never escape on their side of the house. You never allow time for people to go into employment, and millions of people stay unemployed. Because on our side of the house, we've shown you the governments have a duty to do this, and because we help the rights of each and every citizen, I beg you to propose.
If you ask Team England, they would probably say that this whole debate basically takes place in the auto industry in Michigan. But that is a very small part of what automation brings to the world. In defense of the small business that wants to use Amazon to deliver its goods instead of having to hire someone to deliver it. In defense of the hospital that uses automated surgeons in order to save lives when Team England would delay it. On Team Canada, we recognize that yes, sometimes people go employed. Yes, sometimes destruction happens in economies, but that always in history, on the other side of economic advancement, is a specter of a better world for all people that live in it. Team England would take that world away. Crucially, what Team Canada will show you is that as much as Team England wants to claim that really we're just kind of delaying it for a little bit and then we're going to allow it to happen once they retrain people, this actually devastatingly hurts so many industries and people the world over, and a harm they can't ignore. First, I'd like to say a few things on their model. No, they say that basically what they want to do is we want to retrain people. The problem is, in order to retrain people, they need to be in school. And presumably, if they're in school, then they're no longer working in the jobs that they say are going to go obsolete. So presumably, on both sides, those auto workers can be trained, and on both sides, they will be out of a job while they're being trained. So what's the exclusive benefit? Second, they say that they want to increase taxes proportional to the number of machines. Would they apply this to small businesses, ladies and gentlemen? This is a huge thing they left out of their model. I'm going to show you why that's so harmful. But third, they have this monolithic assumption that this only takes place in the developed world, which is absolutely not true. On to refutation. The first thing they say is well, it's legitimate, the state has to protect people. Okay, first of all, this is totally hung on their outcome of protecting people. But second, they're only assuming that the people working in industries are the only ones that matter in the economy, which is not true. But third, on Team Canada, we say that our alternative, which is a sliding scale of corporate tax on the profits of corporations, is one that gets all the benefits of allowing us to raise money to fund education, but doesn't stamp automation and doesn't cause companies to go overseas in the way that they would. Second argument, they say that this brings benefits to workers, right? So they say when you allow global wages to increase, and the average wage will be higher, and so people can start demanding more goods. Or you can provide cheaper goods now, which is what automation does, and have them get those goods today, not 6 years or 60 years from now, which was like 40, 50 years was what they said in this argument. Now, I'd like to move on to constructive. First, talking about the developed world. Second, middle income, low income countries. And finally, my partner is going to talk to you about how this creates a monopoly on automation in the hands of large corporations. First, the developed world. There are two things I'm going to prove to you in this argument. First, automation is good for the developed world. And second, Team England necessarily nip that bud, prevent that industry from growing and actually destroy it, and why that's bad. So, what's the problem with Team England's policy? The problem is, automation is already well underway. What's the problem there? It means there are already a lot of businesses that depend on it. There are already a lot of industries that use it. So their tax that wants to tax them based on their use is actually going to cause a lot of those businesses to shut down because they're already using them. So this idea that, well, we'll have no harm but get all the benefit in the future is ridiculous. So what kind of cutting edge automation do we see? We see Japan, for example, using robots to deliver babies in hospitals, automated pharmacies that won't mess up your prescription, that are able to provide you your drugs on time and deliver them to your door. It means that automated greenhouses can provide better crop yield, but also it means you get a lot of cheaper goods because, as they point out, you don't need to train a robot, they don't have to sleep, you can repair them, and they cost less than having a worker. This is really good because it makes goods affordable to lower income individuals that otherwise would not be. They assume that the only thing that matters is their wage, but not whether or not they can afford to put food on the table, which is brought to you by cheaper goods. Third, this is extremely important for small businesses because for that small business that automates its first two workers, the marginal benefit of that automation is huge for that company on a low budget. But second, small businesses often employ the most people, meaning if Team England wants to get any of their benefit, they need to justify hampering small businesses today, right? Okay, why is this policy extremely bad? First, because it prevents these benefits from accruing, but as I mentioned, it actually kills the industries that are already currently using it. So all those companies, all those small businesses that are already using Amazon to deliver goods, all those small businesses that are already using artificial intelligence to be able to use data on social media in order to do things that otherwise they would have had to hire a person to do, those companies go bankrupt, ladies and gentlemen. So there is unemployment on their side, there is the loss of industry on their side. Why? Even if it's true that on our side we have to tolerate unemployment, is this important? First, because in the long run, we don't think economies should be run in a reactionary way. We think that, yes, it's true, economies move, but people move along with them. And the only way that we can have a healthy, thriving economy in the future is one in which governments don't impede on the ability of industry to develop now. Why doesn't this notably happen with corporate tax? Because when you have a corporate tax, companies aren't charged based on how much automation they use. So they can still use it and they can still benefit. I'll take you in a second. But when they make more profits, we can still tax those profits and use that money wisely. Yes?
So if your sliding scale of corporate tax decreases the ability of some corporations to automate, would you still support that?
Maybe to a slight extent, but we really don't think that that's going to be the outcome, right? Like, we think you're the side that significantly worsens the ability of industries to automate. We don't actually think that's what the corporate tax accomplishes, as I just said. Definitely not in comparison to you guys. Second, middle income countries. Why is this such an important part of this debate? These are the economies yet to develop. These are the millions and billions of people yet to achieve the lifestyle that Team England says is at risk. What's the current problem we see? In a lot of low to middle income countries, a good example of this is Vietnam, there's a race to the bottom in wages. So that means it's hard for those countries to develop middle income industries, because if they wanted to, then they wouldn't be able, if they wanted to have higher wages, then they would simply be outsourcing. So the best case scenario for Team England is this. They prevent automation, and all of those people stay stuck in those low-income jobs. We don't think that that's what's good for an economy. How does automation actually allow development to occur? First, when you replace segments of the labor force with machines, you create an industry that revolves around maintaining those machines, on building those machines domestically, on repairing them, which means that companies and governments are going to invest more in public education because of the huge public will to take advantage of a new industry. These high-income jobs fund luxury industries, they fund other high-income industries, and you allow a middle and upper class in countries where there wouldn't be one otherwise. This is especially true in companies that have very large populations, because then when you manufacture domestically with automated labor, you have a massive pool of people to sell those goods to, which are cheaper, as we talked about. But second, why does their policy really hurt developing economies? Because automation currently isn't there that much yet, which means the only way they can prevent it from coming is if they put such a high tax on the first machines to enter that they never enter in the first place. Why is that so important? Because then those companies will just stick with the cheap labor they already have. So the comparative is you have people who are stuck in these low-income jobs, or at least you allow them to develop with some unemployment. But crucially, I want to talk about big corporations here. There are a lot of big corporations who, when they are faced with this tax, will simply outsource. Then the comparative becomes they don't hire any domestic labor, but they go overseas, compared to they don't hire much domestic labor, but at least you have those automated industries in those countries, so you can have the higher income economies develop around that. That's the best case comparative for Team England, and Team Canada wins that as well. For those reasons, proud to propose.
On side proposition today, we told you about a factual reality in which 1/3 of global workers would lose their jobs and governments would be left systematically unable to care for those people because they did not receive the same incorporation taxes or income taxes. We told you that these changes happen specifically in the low to middle economic background countries they talk about, and this debate was explicitly not about developed economies. We told you these were jobs that are highly repeatable. They're not the doctors or the nurses they want to talk about. So it is problematic, to say the least, that side oppositions stand up and hang their case with their big headline home on how small businesses can't use the Amazon drone. A product that, first of all, does not exist, but second of all, we are happy throwing away every day of the week if it means that millions of people do not lose their jobs. I'm going to bring you an argument in my speech as to how we, in the short term, in those 40 to 50 years, redress the systematic power disparity between businesses and the people that they employ. But before that, a few pieces of rebuttal. The first thing is, we asked them explicitly, what is their theory of change? Because the only thing they come out with on side opposition, in acknowledgement of the fact that millions of people will lose their jobs, will be left starving, and governments will not be able to provide for them, is they say, oh, it doesn't really matter, guys. Like, over history, these things have happened and people have been fine with it. That is factually inaccurate. Every time a massive event like this has happened, for example, the Industrial Revolution and the train replacing people who were, for example, employed in other sectors of transport, that is something that first has eroded the ability of individuals to provide for themselves because they become dependent on the small jobs that big corporations are handing out. But second of all, that again systematically eradicates jobs for people. Okay, 5 minutes of rebuttal. The first is that they claim our principle is hung on our benefits, but they concede that our benefits exist, i.e. they concede that in 40 to 50 years' time, loads of people will lose their jobs. They need to engage with why specifically governments in the short term have a moral obligation to protect their people from what we told you, and has not been challenged, is an existential threat. Second thing, they say, oh, we can train these people too, but they provide no analysis here. Crucially, the link we gave in our first, and was not responded to, was you are more likely and more able to open up training programs for millions of people. You're more likely to be able to subsidize education in countries that do not have it when you increase taxes on big corporations and you hurt their baseline, you hurt their shareholders. Third point of the bottom, they say this policy shuts down businesses and it stops automation. Three things here. First, we just do not care. We do not care if the profits of some of the largest and most affluent corporations on the planet are hurt, and if the only consequence of that is the manufacturing tolerances of cars increase slightly. Or if, for example, your pharmacist or your doctor who currently delivers the baby, and by the way, currently does a really good job, is replaced by a machine that is very, very slightly better at doing that job. Second response here is all of their benefits, no thank you, about cheaper goods are worthless at the point at which a significant proportion of your population cannot afford to buy those goods because they do not have a job that gives them income with which to purchase things. Third and finally of all, we asked them in a POI, hang on a second, your mechanism is increasing taxes on companies that are large. Does that not also impact their ability to perform automation? And they conceded yes. So principally, all of the harms about impacting businesses still accrue if you levy large taxes against them that they would seem to want to do.
On that point.
Next thing here is they say, small businesses are eliminated. So two responses here. First, realistically, a small business is not going to be harmed because it is unable to use an Amazon drone or is unable to use automation. But second of all, most importantly, these are exactly the kind of businesses that will not be able to use automation and therefore will be driven out of extinction because automation has the kind of very high startup cost. That is, you have to buy large machines, you have to buy people who are capable of programming it. It means that your corner stores and your small two-chain businesses are exactly the people who are hurt by the status quo and exactly the people we protect on our side. Fourth thing, they say that economies will change, and that's a good thing in the long run because we have people transitioning towards, for example, caring for these machines, repairing them, and therefore the government has an incentive to provide education. Let's think about this. Is it beneficial for you on side opposition to get one job created for someone repairing or protecting or programming one of these machines? Or is it more problematic that to get that one job, you have had to destroy the 100 jobs that machine has replaced in car manufacturing, in textiles manufacturing in Bangladesh? Last thing they throw out, no thank you, is they say, oh yeah, loads of jobs will move overseas. This is problematic, given this policy is global. That is to say that these jobs will move and will employ someone somewhere else. We're unsure why that is a specific harm of our policy. Before I move on to that argument about how we redress the power disparity that is leading to exploitation, yes.
Would you rather Walmart go online and then we get no benefits, or at least they automate workers and there's a high-income industry for maintenance that develops around that without taxing?
Come on, if Walmart goes online, they necessarily rely on automation technologies. That is to say that at the best case scenario, they still have a warehouse where they process all of their goods. They still have delivery vans that take those goods to people's homes. In the very, very best case scenario for you guys, where a business goes online as a result of our policy, we still take loads of tax money from that company. We still provide loads of people with training because that company has eliminated so many jobs. To my argument about how we redress the power disparity. Automation, as we told you in our first speech, is not here yet to the extent that it has a devastating impact on people. For it to be implemented in full scale, for it to become fully economically viable, we're likely going to have to wait a couple of decades. And that's not because this technology doesn't exist, as opposition rightly point out, but because the cost of that technology is so high. In the same way that the first computers cost thousands and thousands of dollars, but 2 decades down the line, I can now buy one for about $100 in almost any convenience store. The price of this technology will decrease over time, quite logically, as they point out. The consequence of that, right, is that in the short term, in the 40 to 50 year gap they can see takes place, companies are able to use the threat of automation to systematically exploit people. They're able to put down workers who agitate for higher pay to say, hey guys, if you agitate for that much higher pay, we will just automate and stop you from being able to access those jobs entirely. They're able to clobber unions that ask that they have higher safety standards, for example, because they say, hang on guys, if you're caring about safety standards to the extent for which we have to pay money, we might as well automate our businesses. How do we change this on-site proposition? In the short term at least, in that 40 to 50 year period, people now know this is not a viable strategy for companies because it is simply too expensive. What are the consequences of that? It means that specifically the lower income workers, what we think this debate is about both in the short and the long term, get better safety standards. You're less likely to get incidents like the Rana Plaza incident in 2013 where a building collapsed, killing 1,500 people. If companies are not able to bully workers with the threat of automation in the short term, you're less likely to have workers at Foxconn have their wages slashed year on year, while the wages of their CEOs increase twofold every year because they cannot threaten them with, oh, we'll just fire you if you demand that much higher wages because it will be more economically efficient for us to automate. We do not allow businesses to hold their employees to ransom in the 40 to 50 year period that side opposition concede exists in this debate. This debate is about two questions. The first is whether we believe this policy is fundamentally fair to natural businesses. We brought you 3 strands in our first speech, none of which have been responded to. About 1, this being an extension of existing policy. 2, about the existential threat that individuals face. And 3rd, about how governments have a right, consequently, to do this. Second strand of this debate is about the practical impacts. And we make a very simple claim on side of proposition. That is that when you tax companies in the short term and long term, you have more money to do things like provide training programs, like transition people, like provide the very education they also support on side opposition, that processes people towards future-proof industries. Industries like nursing, industries like the media and culture, industries like technology. We are very proud.
Team England today has pushed a falsehood. They tell you that we're globally right on the precipice of automation, about to make a big mistake, blindly falling into the chasm. I hate to break the news to Team England, but the Amazon drone exists. It's efficient, it's affordable, it makes goods more affordable for real people and real families. Team England has given you a false choice, one between high employment and poverty, one between human workers and robot workers. Things simply are not that simple, and this is a false dichotomy. The choice is between a tax on robots that disincentivizes science and innovation, or a corporate tax that can achieve the exact same benefits. The choice is actually between robot workers here or robot workers in another country where we get no profits. They've characterized it all wrong. And that's what I'm going to be showing today. First refutation, then a rebuild, and then I'm going to show you how their motion concentrates the levers of power in the hands of the few. They identify 2 main constructive arguments in their first speech. Firstly, that it's legitimate for the government to step in due to their fiduciary duty, their duty of care to the people. And secondly, that they are going to effectively slow the rate of automation. The principle, the first argument, is hung on the outcome, the second argument, because no matter how good the principle is, if it doesn't achieve anything, they have nothing to stand for. These arguments only work if 2 things, and both of these 2 things are true. Firstly, their policy actually has to work, and secondly, it can't be achieved any other way. How have we disproven this? Firstly, we proved that it's not going to work due to outsourcing. Companies are simply going to pick up and move overseas and either hire low-wage workers there or automate in those other countries, which means not only do you not get the robot tax, you don't even get the corporate tax, and then you can't achieve anything. On the corporate tax, that's where we take down the idea that they can't achieve this any other way, because we told you that a corporate tax can literally be used to redirect funds into education, retraining, the social safety net, all the sorts of things that they want. They give you this new argument at the end about how companies can threaten workers. 3 lines of response. Firstly, we tell you that in their world, companies are going to pay their workers even less when they have to recoup the loss of what they could have made off of automation. Secondly, how does this even work in the minds of Team England? Do bosses go into the break room when people are standing around the water cooler and say, hey, you better watch it or we're going to automate? I don't really understand what this looks like in their minds. Thirdly, if this is a real thing, I think corporations do this with outsourcing. I think corporations do this with lots of things that we allow to happen. There's kind of just some power imbalances. We gave you a framework that said, look, humanity has advanced through the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. It was difficult, but our economies weren't reactionary. They had policies by which they stood, and as a result, we are now profiting off it. The reason we are in this room, the reason there's a camera recording my speech, the reason that we can do all sorts of amazing things like even fly to this country is because we didn't try to get in the way of that change in a way that would stop or even just slow it down. On rebuild, they didn't have much to say refutation. They basically said small businesses won't be harmed. Very assertive, very hung on the idea that small businesses don't already use automation, which I think Armin conclusively and empirically disproved. And we told you that the corporate tax does the same thing. And what they said is, well, even if it can, the harms are exactly the same. If that's true, it's a wash, but here's why the harms aren't the same. Their tax targets a specific activity of a corporation and tries to influence that corporation to do a different activity, diverting all of the benefits of the first activity. The corporate tax is a general tax off the profits that anyone would make, regardless of how they drew that profit, that doesn't actually disincentivize any behavior. I'll now get into my argument about concentrating levers of power in the hands of the few, but before that,
The one reason you give that our policy won't work is outsourcing. Given that we're in a world schools debating format and therefore this policy is global, could you explain how outsourcing works
Just
when every
because
country
you're
institutes this
implementing
policy?
a tax on a sort of profit or a sort of behavior doesn't mean you can mandate that every single country in the world will have that tax, or even that it will be the same tax in every country in the world. I'm sorry you don't like that, but some countries will intentionally lower their tax rate to get corporations to move their businesses there. That's kind of like the entire problem
Point
in
of
the world.
information.
Okay, no thank you. Constructive argumentation. Their case is constructed in a world in which automation is largely profitable for big corporations. We think that in many cases this is true. The problem is that when they implement this motion, they consolidate those profits in the hands of the already existingly wealthy, something that they stated constructively they didn't want it. How does this happen? Going into the business of automation in the first place has very high startup costs. It's an investment. You have to pay for the technology, the programmers, the technicians, you have to have the machinery. These are all costs you have to pay before you earn even 1 penny of profit. Under the status quo, different companies with a very diverse range of starting capital make this investment because it's extremely likely that they're going to get a high return on their automation. In team propositions world, companies can do one of two things, and we think both are extremely probable. As we've already said, the first thing they can do is outsource. We haven't really heard any reason that they won't do that. If they can convincingly tell you that they won't outsource, something else is going to happen. And this is as follows. When Team England takes significant chunks off the top of the profit of automation, big companies with many holdings, many streams of income, and very, very diverse portfolios of capital can swallow the harm. They can pay the taxes. They can wait while Team England buys time and then make a lot of money in 50 years, and it's no difference to them. What really changes is when it comes to the smaller companies that Team England has quite consistently shown they don't care about. Here's what happens. These companies under the status quo are willing to spend significant amounts of their capital or take out huge loans because there are going to be high returns on their automation. It's extremely likely. When those profits are significantly reduced by the government, these companies don't assume the startup costs. Proposition is forcing literally everyone, except for the absolute wealthiest, to bet the entire farm in a very risky way if they want to automate. Smaller companies won't do this. This means that automation will be only owned and operated by the world's absolute largest corporations. This is problematic on 3 fronts. Firstly, the principle of the quid pro quo. Reaching a point in society at which automation was even a glimmer of a possibility was a collective scientific effort. We had to commit as societies to the principle of technology, to the principle of using machines to restructure and make our lives easier. We all worked very hard to generate tax dollars that went into scientific research and funding. We don't think it's fair if, when it's time to eat the pie that we all cooked together, only the corporations that have tons of money are chowing down. Secondly, disproportionate harm. If Team England thinks it's harmful for companies to replace humans, they have to be in for a penny, in for a pound. The company that replaces 1,000 human beings is not deterred nearly as much as the company that's replacing 10 or even 100 human beings. That's a really big logical problem that's very counterproductive and very counterintuitive to their aims. But finally, competition and innovation. Humankind got on the moon far earlier than it would have because of the race between the USA and the USSR to get there first. By the same token, in the race to make automation cheaper, in the race to make it more efficient, to make it more accessible, we need as many people running in that race, biting at each other's ankles, forcing each other to work harder, to go farther, to compete with each other, to make automation the best that it possibly can be. Look, it's very simple. Both teams know automation is coming. Team Canada leans in. Team Canada makes it better. They are essentially behaving as Luddites who wouldn't want mass-scale change. This is unacceptable. Proud to oppose.
So the first speaker on Team Canada stands up and tells us that we're apparently bringing about the demise of automation as we know it by fundamentally disincentivizing companies from adopting this innovation. The second speaker goes on to make an argument that says some companies will suck this up and they will swallow the taxes and they will invest anyway. That is great under our side of the house. Because firstly, we note this is in tension with our argument about innovation not occurring, given that they tell you big people will continue to make big bets. But secondly, we are entirely okay with Google continuing to attempt to pioneer. But under our side of the house, we tax the hell out of them if they choose to do so, because we can redistribute those funds towards protecting people who are going to lose their jobs, redistributing towards education, and giving people the tools to deal with the demise that is ultimately going to come. Ladies and gentlemen, the robots are coming. Side opposition are the Luddites that refuse to accept that. 3 areas of clash in this debate. Firstly, is it principally legitimate for us to tax? Secondly, what are the implications for workers on each side of the house? And thirdly, alternative threats. So, on the first one, is it principally legitimate for us to tax? The very first point of information that we get from side opposition says, would you have done this for the steam engine? We returned with, of course we would, because we saw that in the Industrial Revolution, saw massive increases in inequality, massive increases in job losses, the ramifications of which we are still experiencing in the 21st century. And notably, that's an example that they bring up in their first speech and drop in the rest of their case. But we noted that eventually this change is inevitable. And this is a direct response to their claim that we destroy it all, that apparently we nip it in the bud. Fundamentally, economic incentives at some stage are still going to manifest in which automation has to be brought to the fore. Our case is one that says we ought delay that through disincentivization of those companies, through higher rates of tax if they choose to do so now, in the name of protecting our workers. Secondly, we would point out the woeful lack of engagement with our principle. Because their only response thus far in this debate is say, oh, well, this hangs on your benefits. No, it does not. We told you that governments have a principal obligation to their people on the basis that they see a potential for harm in the future. We told you this was most likely to affect the bottom 1/3, the people that governments have often neglected in the past, and that often it is unforeseen. The fact that only 9% of people believe that automation is going to take their job, when in reality that number is closer to 59%. We think that creates a massive impetus for governments to do something to protect these people. But secondly, we point out the disproportionate advantage that companies are gaining by their decision to automate, literally taking tax revenue away from governments because they are no longer paying people wages, they no longer have to pay payroll tax, they no longer have to provide retirement funds or sick days or any form of welfare to their workers, and instead that burden is being placed on governments to provide welfare because these companies have taken away their jobs. There's an even further impetus for governments to take some form of action to protect these people. Their only response is to say, well, and I quote, we should not run economies in a reactionary way. What? That is exactly the neoliberal experiment which has failed fundamentally and has led to skyrocketing inequality, skyrocketing CEO pay. When they say, well, we are now profiting from the airplane because we're all here today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are profiting, the people in this room. But there are many people around the world who are fundamentally suffering from the fact that automation is taking away their jobs and you are doing nothing to remedy their plight. No thank you. Let's look secondly. Let's look at what are the implications for workers on each side of the house. And here we're going to do a direct comparison of the two sides in this debate. No thanks. Their model provided them with a little bit of a problem. And that's because they said, we support high corporation taxes. We point out with a bit of information that if these corporation taxes are now disincentivizing companies from innovating, because the money that they would have spent on innovation is now being paid to higher corporation taxes, you are effectively doing our policy. Their only response is to say, well, actually, the majority of innovation is being carried out by small companies, and therefore are unlikely to be harmed by these higher rates of corporation tax. Now, that seems unlikely, given that the forerunners in the race for driverless cars or other forms of innovation and technology are people like Google, people like Facebook. If you're supporting higher corporation taxes on those companies, you are necessarily undermining your point about increased innovation and the crucial need for this automation. So they don't even support their own principal claim on the side of opposition. But next, they say, this is about small companies. It's about Amazon drones and robot deliveries of Japanese babies. Essentially, this is the point about innovation. Now, firstly, we don't think the majority of automation that occurs either falls into the brackets of drones or babies, given those are the two major examples that they give you. And that seems unlikely. Furthermore, when they say in their second speaker speech, and I quote, this has a very high startup cost. So, if this has a really high startup costs? Why is a small company, apparently the people that we are undermining under your side of the house, likely to have the levels of automation that led to an increase in the amount of taxes that they pay? Fundamentally, this is more likely to be the characterization that their second speaker gives us later in our point, that the majority of innovation is done by big players who are apparently going to monopolize the market, to different contentions in the same speech. But no, crucially that means that we're likely to be able to tax these people and redirect the fundings in a way that actually helps vulnerable individuals. But thirdly and finally, no thank you, we think that small companies are most harmed in a world where they are outcompeted by larger companies who are able to automate now and provide cheaper products and undercut any prices that they offer. So when they make arguments about, oh well, there are vulnerable people at the bottom who need these cheaper goods today, when you take away the jobs of those people because they're being automated away, the likelihood that they're able to buy products decreases substantially. But thirdly and finally, you know, you go first.
If your problem, your principal bone of contention is the disproportionate profit suck, why not tax the profit instead of the activity, which is an activity you perceive to be beneficial?
Look, that is one of the reasons why we think these individuals should be taxed. Our principle was multi-layered. But secondly, we point out that we ought to levy this tax on the companies who are using automation to fundamentally avoid the paying of workers and the supporting of an economy. But finally, they want to hang all of their benefits of employment on, we can employ people in maintaining these machines, and therefore they will receive a higher pay in the future. Ultimately, this doesn't understand the fact that 10 men are replaced by one machine, and 10 machines are fixed by one man. The question is what is everyone else supposed to do? If they've already lost their jobs to automation, they're far more likely to be able to go into our schools, because remember, they lost their jobs, and effectively get training that allows them to engage with the economy in the future. This is a direct response to their material about raising the wage of the people at the bottom, because those people are unlikely to be the ones receiving those jobs. Thirdly and finally, alternative threats. We told you that companies are likely to use the threat of automation in order to undermine the powers of governments to protect their own people. And that is something that they are continuing to do. Their only response is to say, oh well, there are other ways in which they do that. That does not engage with the fact that the government ought to try to stop this one channel that they are using in order to pressure them away from protecting their workers. But when they say, oh, they're just going to move it offshore, fine, we're okay with you moving those jobs offshore, because fundamentally they are still jobs, and that empowers people. But secondly, if they move it offshore and then automate, we are going to increase the taxes on their decision to do that anyway as well. So fundamentally, we are far more likely to protect the workers that we know are going to lose their jobs in the future. All of these reasons, so proud of proponents.
Both sides in this debate agree on two things. First, that automation is inevitable, and secondly, that automation will result in a shift of jobs between industries or the types of people who are employed in those industries. The difference between the two teams in this debate is twofold. First, our characterization of whether or not there even is a role for automation in society at all. Because proposition can't say in this debate that it's okay to have some automation now, but later on it's going to become so harmful. The reason for that is, if their entire case is banked on companies are starting to use automation now because it's so much more profitable than the worker, then they have to disincentivize it, which is why they're particularly putting on a tax on that activity. If it costs $10 to use the machine, but $40 to use the worker, they have to, for their motion to be effective, not only bridge the $30 gap between those costs, but sway it towards making that automation impossible or very unprofitable. They don't have any role for automation on their side of the house. But the second difference between the two teams is our mechanism of addressing the inevitability of automation. Because opposition supports taxing companies on their profits, but crucially, not a specific mechanism of accruing those profits. When you tax companies on their overall profits, there are many ways that companies can choose to take that tax. They can make their production lines more efficient. They can choose to cut down on costs in terms of the materials that they're using, for example. What they're doing is they're specifically saying this one way of coming to produce those products using automation is harmful. What that means is, if you vote for proposition, You'd also have to vote for things like putting a tax on the development of the car industry when there was still the buggy, because that is a logical extension of their points of saying, like, look, people are going to be replaced, we need to stop it now before it gets worse. Two areas of clash. First, the principle, and second of all, the protection of workers. In terms of the principle, they want us to engage with their best principle, so I will do so. Their principle is that the government needs to use money to give back to the workers whose jobs are lost and to retrain those workers. There's an externality that companies need to consider. So in order for this point to be effective, because both sides agree that governments have a responsibility to protect their people, they need to prove that this mechanism is uniquely beneficial at protecting workers without the harms that we're pushing on all. Our first response is their protection isn't exclusive, both because we have another tax that we say doesn't have the benefits they're pushing. It's not true companies will now automate less. But two, if companies are now more profitable because they're using automation, because they're able to produce products more efficiently, you have a larger pool of funds from which to tax. So if their end goal is to have more taxes to redistribute to more workers, you actually get more money overall on our side of things. But second of all, this argument is only powerful if you believe that there are significantly more people that are unemployed now, that we need more money now to retrain these workers. So let me deal with the huge assertion on Team Proposition that there's absolutely no role for human workers in a world with automation. There is, because there are some jobs that just can't be automated, and they conceded this. There are some jobs that range from quality control in a factory to literally service industries in the tertiary and quaternary sectors. But more importantly, the difference between the two sides is we create an impetus for governments to focus on that retraining, to focus on the development of new industries. If your jobs are actively disappearing, you have more of an incentive as a government to educate your population and to provide those services for them. So it's not true on Team Proposition side of the House that you're looking at a doomsday scenario where if you don't have a tax, everyone will suddenly lose their jobs. In fact, we say more people get better jobs when there's a bit of an impetus for the government to catch up to automation. Then Kenta comes back and says, well, our principle is more layered. You have to deal with this aspect of companies using automation as an excuse to not pay workers or give them their full rights. Panel, my question to you is, why is it better to tell those companies that you can pay workers less, give them fewer benefits, because you're now making it artificially far more expensive to hire the individual worker? For all of their benefits to accrue, you have to put a pressure or an onus on companies to make it expensive for them to use automation. So even if it's a benevolent company, they're far less likely to hire an extra worker on the assembly line to pay them more when it's now so expensive for them to do so. Second area of clash, the protection of workers, and this is where they hung a lot of their case on. Their major mechanism is that in the short term, you now create an incentive for companies to hire more workers. This is their major mechanism because I've shown you that retraining workers is not exclusive to their side. The critical assumption on Team Proposition is that a choice for a company is between using a machine and hiring a worker. That is not the choice in many cases. The choice is between using a machine and using really, really cheap labor. When we talk about outsourcing, we're talking about the fact that if automation is so cheap, which is why companies are turning to it now, they'll be more likely to go somewhere overseas where that labor is comparably cheap. But second of all, the choice is between using a machine and hiring fewer laborers. It's not necessarily true that they're going to replace the machine that they otherwise cut out by hiring an extra person. Third of all, that choice is between using a machine and paying their workers more or giving them more benefits. Yeah, actually go ahead.
Could you respond to our analysis as to how it takes time to retrain workers, given that economies as a whole have to develop in order for the demand for these service industries to be there at all?
So we have a pool right now of money that we can use to retrain workers because these taxes are already in existence. And if it's also your case that these jobs are in the short term, like disappearing right now, there's an immediate need to do it because your model is implementing the tax right now, not in the future, then you also have to support the mechanisms that we have in place to address the inequalities right now. We say that your exclusive benefit of retraining these workers isn't actually exclusive, but comes with a whole host of harms. So when they say that companies are now going to have an incentive to hire more workers, it's not tension for us to argue that there are multiple things that companies can do. Because Kenza says, we say that sometimes they will swallow up the cost, but other times they'll go out of business. We see that there are different types of companies who respond in different types of ways. Some will choose to swallow up the cost, but the harm of them swallowing up that cost is they're now less able to hire the extra worker on the factory assembly line. They're less able to pay that worker more. Others who choose to swallow up the cost will now develop a monopoly within that industry. Only those top few companies will be able to develop automation. And then there's that whole host of other companies, the small businesses, who it's not the startup cost of the tech that's actually limiting them. These companies oftentimes are willing to take the risk of taking out a loan to develop automation for the profits that will accrue in the future. But it's the fact that the certainty of those profits will never arise because they know that they will always be taxed. So those small businesses either go to business, become incredibly inefficient, and displace a whole host of workers. What are you left with at the end of this debate to make the comparison really clear? They want to bank their case on people whose jobs are certainly going to be lost. But that isn't an exclusive benefit for their side of the house, because we can also retrain and provide more money for those workers. In fact, we have the added benefit of having a greater impetus for change than just waiting for rich people to demand tertiary sector industries when literally jobs are disappearing. The rest of the debate has to come down to all of us, every single person in this room who doesn't know about the future of their job. We have mitigated the likelihood and the certainty of Proposition being able to protect these workers because of the necessity of the harms that companies will have to juggle, that they'll have to swallow, versus the certainty of the harms that will accrue if you pass this motion. The certainty of the small business that will have to close, the certainty of innovation being stifled, the certainty of that extra worker not being hired on the assembly line for quality control because it's too expensive for the company to hire them. They haven't proven that they'll protect workers, but we've proven a certainty of harms that it could occur in multiple scenarios. On that basis, we're proud to oppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, this debate really comes down to how you believe the world's economies should be operated. Unemployment occurs when change occurs, when evolution occurs, when progress occurs. Your choice is whether you want that economy to suffocate innovation, to suffocate the change that comes to hospitals, that comes to farms, and that comes to small businesses, or have an economy that embraces the future, that sees the specter that is coming and embraces it because it's good. I want to start by pointing out the crucial flaw in Team England's case, which is that they really have a three-step plan. Delay the inevitable, retrain everyone, and then let everyone go back to business. The problem is, somehow, they wanted to let tens of millions of people keep working their jobs, but then train them again all at once, which is something from the first speech we said they couldn't do, and somehow do this all in 40 to 50 years. But second, Team Canada showed that we can do the same thing as well with retraining, that we can have high corporate taxes, but we don't need to suffocate automation in order to do it. But third, we pointed out the crucial assumption that Team England made, which was that they could implement this policy with minimal sacrifice. But this is a sacrifice. It comes at the expense of all the automation that has already occurred in the world, all the automation that people have come to depend on. Two questions then. First, the developed world. Second, the developed world. In the developed world, Team England say, let's hold the brakes and then go full steam ahead later. Again, Team Canada showed you that it's not that simple, that the hospitals that are using robots to deliver babies, the pharmacies that are using them to prescribe the right medication, that the greenhouses using them to get higher crop yields, and the companies using them for big data are all going to go under on Team England's side of the house. That those are the companies they shut down. This is because in their model, they say that they want this to scale. It's how much automation you use that determines your tax, which necessarily means in those parts of the world where automation is doing the most good, they will suffer the most. Team Canada also told you how different businesses are affected, that some big companies will outsource, and that this was really important because it outlined the comparative. Have companies use cheap labor in other countries, so there's no domestic industry in the country that they left from, or let them use automation in that domestic industry and have higher industries develop around that, things like maintenance. This was also really important because if these big companies outsource, then I'm really wondering where all of Team England's tax money is going to come from if those companies have left. But we also told you that smaller businesses that have put a lot of their money into using really efficient machines are going to be harmed. Team England say, well, small businesses wouldn't be able to afford the startup cost to begin with. But this isn't the point we made. We said that small businesses can afford it because of the efficiency. But if the monopoly is allowed, then it will become too expensive and small businesses won't be allowed to be able to afford it anymore. Team England wanted to tax Google. Let's tax them and get all of their profit. But on Team Canada, we provided you a better alternative. Sure, tax their profit, but don't do it at the expense of stifling all the great work they're doing. We don't see why that's necessary. The developing world was where Team England really ignored the debate, because Team Canada gave you a constructive argument on the wealth trap that exists and how to avoid it using automation. All Team England say is, well, 10 workers for one repairman isn't worth it. But this was such an oversimplification, ladies and gentlemen. Literally, they are preventing a country like Vietnam from being able to access higher income industries within its country because they'd rather people there were condemned to working in the assembly line or in the plantations for all of eternity after this. Crucially, because Team England would tax the first machines that would ever enter into those countries, preventing them from being used in the first place. So Team England wanted something very simple, just retrain and allow the business to continue. Not only can Team Canada do that better, but Team Canada points out their policy is way more destructive than they would have you believe. For those reasons, proud to oppose.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
Side proposition won this debate. The line that opposition never engaged with was that automation will always be more efficient and therefore always be cheaper for these companies in the long run. The consequence of that is that the robots are coming. The jobs will be replaced under both sides. At which point, this debate became which side better provides for the massive job losses that are conceded under their side of the house when their first opposition speech starts with, sure we have harms, but that is a necessity. Two questions for judging this debate. First, should governments be obliged to do our policy? And second of all, what are the impacts on the wider economies? On governments, the thrust of the proposition was as follows. Governments are obliged to protect the citizens from which they derive their legitimacy by doing exactly this policy. Because it allows them to be trained, because it allows for the rapid process of automation to be slowed down by a process for a couple of decades. And for all their claims about this being a contingent argument, it evidently wasn't, because they conceded in the first line of first opposition that there will be losses. Now, if a government understands that these losses will take place, the moral obligation of that government to protect its citizens insofar as it is able, whilst balancing the rights of companies, incurs. Intuitively, if you believe that automation will lose jobs and that those losing jobs will harm people, Proposition 1 is flash. Second argument in this debate was about the impact on the wider economies. Now, both sides agreed that retraining and rebalancing of economies was vital. That was the opposition stance in this debate. And first, we set out an explicit comparison. Under which side are these retraining policies, the redirection of people into new industries, more likely? When you follow a status quo where companies will slowly pay fewer and fewer taxes while simultaneously leaving millions upon millions more people every year unemployed, or in a world where we correct that drain in taxes that will take place, where we take more from these companies, the most wealthy entities on the planet, and we channel that money specifically towards the training programs for people that they make for them. Now, the only actual response from side opposition to the core tenet, the core clash of this debate was, oh, well, obviously you can't train people and let them have a job at the same time. Simply facetious, because as we pointed out, you are retraining people after they have lost their existing job. But what did side opposition bring to the table? The first thing they say is that this fundamentally harms business. But this is in fundamental contention with their second speaker, when she says that these big businesses will be able to suck it up in the short term because of long-term financial benefit. The second thing they say is that small businesses will be harmed. And again, we tell you in third that small businesses specifically will not be harmed, because, to quote the second speech, the high startup costs of these businesses mean that, intuitively, do you think that small companies, like the mini-mart down the road, are the ones that have these very big, like, automation arms picking things off the shelves? Or is it more likely that companies like Tesla, Facebook, Google are the companies that do this and the companies that we harm? Evidently, that was the case, and we received no response to that in the third one. Next thing they said was, they brought a whole bunch of things in their third speech about how we stifle innovation, about how when you make it more expensive for these companies to operate, they hire fewer people. Now, there are two things that we said on this. The first was that the vast majority of innovation is done by big companies, and insofar as you can see that these big companies can suck it up in the short term, all of the innovation that you talk about still happens. Name us a small company that's not Amazon, their headline example, that has done exactly this kind of innovation. But second of all, it is always less expensive in the long run. These businesses have a financial incentive to innovate. Carbon capture technology, for example, is really expensive and really inefficient in the short term, but it is yet another analogy of where you provide benefits in the long run. The last really facetious thing they threw out in this argument was, oh yeah, these businesses will move overseas. We took them at their best here and we said, okay, if jobs will move overseas, why is that problematic? Because those are jobs that would otherwise be automated in one industry. We are now providing people in Bangladesh with actual employment. But then we said, we don't have to take them at their best, we can take them on reality. This tax applies everywhere in the world, so it's not clear to us why we cannot just fiat that Bangladesh also does this motion. Proposition 2.